In the realm of animated studios, one name shines brighter than any other: Disney. Now, when people think of Disney, usually the first thing that comes to their mind are the beautiful prince and princesses and the death of their parents.
It seems long, but it won't last forever.
It's almost a staple in Disney for teaching kids about life lessons. However, contrary to popular belief, your whole life won't be fixed thanks to a talking animal in a 90-minute runtime. Now, I know these movies are marketed towards children, and you can't have Tiana lose a restaurant because the white man wanted to turn into a Walmart, but I just think it's insulting as a child who was raised on early Disney movies to just have everything magically work out at the end. No, I like my kids' movies to be fucked up. I like the Disney Dark Ages. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the term Disney Dark Ages, or better known as the Disney Bronze Age, these were a series of films from 1970 to 1988 that Disney were experimenting with after the death of Walt Disney. These were challenging times for Disney, as the animation industry faced new competition and changing audience preferences. Yet, it was within these challenging times that Disney created some of their best work. These films usually involved a darker story plot, darker color palettes, disturbing imagery, and an overall more sinister mood to them. It started in the 1970s with the Aristocats and Robin Hood until 1988, when Disney decided they wanted to stop making less than $100 million at the box office. Now, there are a ton of movies made during this time. Some of them even managed to get a remake. Somehow. I'm not only going to be covering a handful of the more well-known movies during this time, but also explore some of the more unknown films that don't really get talked about a lot. Now, if I don't mention your favorite movie in this era, just know that probably suck complete ass. Just know that these movies I found displayed the best representation of what I think Disney's lacking in when it comes to their modern movies. So without further ado, let's dive right into the childhood trauma. Released in 1973, Robin Hood was the second movie Disney released during the Disney Dark Age. Due to the lack of budget, many of the voice actors were reused for future Disney films, like Pat Buttram, who voice acted in 4 of the Dark Age films. One thing Robin Hood does in regards to its characters is basing their personalities on what people associate those animals with. Robin Hood is portrayed as a cunning fox, keeping in tradition of what many people associate when they think of foxes. Other characters such as Friar Tuck, Little John, and Hiss are brought to life through amazing voice acting and well-crafted animation, making them extremely memorable and likable. Even characters like Prince John and the Sheriff of Nottingham are enjoyable to watch and have some really funny moments.
Sheriff, everything ain't all's well. I got a feeling in my bones there's gonna be a jailbreak any minute.
Cram a netley, Trigger. Point that pea shooter the other way.
Don't you worry none, Sheriff. The safety's on old Betsy.
What in tarnation you trying to do, you bird brain? Wait a minute. Is the safety on old Betsy?
You bet it is, Sheriff.
That's what I'm afraid of. You go first.
Disney manages to weave a captivating narrative that combines elements of adventure, romance, and comedy. I don't know why, but it's just so funny seeing a chicken running down a field like a football player. The vintage hand-drawn animations distinctive to Disney's traditional style is just so visually appealing to look at. And let's not forget some absolute banger fiddles conjured by the Disney composers. Now, let me just take a moment to talk about the romance in this movie. I don't know if it's just the old animation style or the chemistry of the voice actors, but the romantic scenes between Robin Hood and Maid Marian feel genuinely real and are the perfect example of how romance between two characters should be portrayed. Animation is another big priority in establishing a relationship, and if you need an example, take the scene in this film when both Robin Hood and Maid Marian are just staring into each other's eyes as the slow tempo but melancholy music plays in the background. This is how you show love. The film presents a message of hope and injustice. However, Disney wanted to show two sides of the coin when it comes to power. You have one side which represents characters like Prince John and the Sheriff of Nottingham, who use their authority to corrupt the town for their own self-interest. On the other side, you have Robin Hood and Little John, who use what power they gain in order to provide for the town. It's certainly not a complex theme, but their delivery and simplistic methods stick with the audience and shape it to become a timeless classic between good and evil. Robin Hood has left a lasting impact on pop culture, not only on the longtime Disney fans, but younger audiences just learning about the old movies. The characters' depictions in the film have also become widely recognized and beloved, serving as future inspiration for future adaptations and reimaginings of the Robin Hood story. So do you guys remember that small, low-budget movie, you might have not heard of it, called Star Wars? You know, the movie that sparked a whole series of films and TV shows, exploring the lore and massive universe that continues to be one of the biggest franchises in media history? Well, we're not going to be talking about that. Released in 1979, 1 year after Star Wars, Black Hole was supposed to be the predecessor to the success of Star Wars, and as you can see by the box office, it put up a pretty good fight. But this video is not meant to trash on Disney movies. I mean, hell, Disney already owns Star Wars, so they pretty much won in the end anyway. But today I'm here to talk about why Black Hole is actually kind of a good movie. The film takes place in an abandoned spaceship that the crew of the USS Palomino stumble upon. The crew consists of Dr. Alex Durant, Captain Dan Honold, Lieutenant Charles Pfizer, Dr. Kate McRae, and Harry Booth. I guess Harry wasn't important enough to get a title. While watching this movie, it's clear that it takes a lot of inspiration from other movies within the same genre. There are very similar design choices parallel to movies like Star Wars and the Alien franchise, in terms of music and tone. Now you may be wondering why I'm even including this film if I don't seem to be pretty fond of it, and that's where you'd be wrong, because unlike movies like Robin Hood where I like it because of the characters and its ability to teach real world themes to children in a darker tone, I like this movie because it's scary. Now when I say scary, I don't mean like horror movie scary, I mean in terms of Disney movie scary, which is less scary and more eerie and just gives me a weird feeling.
Black hole is pulling us in. It could also be dead. Be dead.
Now one thing I do need to give this movie props on is its overall tone throughout the film. It feels a lot like an episode of The Twilight Zone in the sense that the way it's shot and the atmosphere the movie presents to the audience causes a very unnerving feeling. It's kind of hard to describe in words, but if you watch this movie and you get deeper into the story's plot, you start to get what I'm talking about. While Black Hole may have been marked as a family-friendly film, it does delve into darker and more mature themes such as the boundaries of human ambition and the pursuit of immortality. This is arguably the closest I would say to Disney coming to making a family-friendly horror movie. The movie does have a pretty interesting protagonist, having both Maximilian and Reinhardt sort of act as the movie's villains. Now you could argue that Reinhardt was more captured and forced against his will based on one piece of dialogue that never gets addressed again.
Protect me from Maximilian.
This happens very similarly in the beginning of the movie, where it sort of hints that one of the characters can communicate telepathically with one of the robots, but like never does it again.
Either we have a malfunction here or there's too much interference on the outside. See if you can get through to Vincent with your ESP.
I got through to Vincent.
The plot of this movie is definitely not its high point. How they end up dealing with Reinhardt is just by literally having a TV drop directly on him. And I was taking notes while I was watching all of these films, and this movie had the weirdest fucking notes I've ever written. It's mainly a lot of confusion on why they would decide to go a certain route, but for some reason it like really fits this film. While I may not have achieved the same mainstream praise of other Disney movies, I would say if you do end up watching this film, go into it appreciating what it has to offer and how different it was from other Disney movies coming out at the time. The Fox and the Hound, released in 1981, is an animated film that, at its core, is about two unlikely friends, Todd the Fox and Copper the Hound, who form a deep bond as kids, only to be torn apart by cruel societal norms. A theme that still relates even today. allowing audiences of all ages to understand the story from their own perspective. The film portrays the emotional journey of characters, evoking a wide range of feelings from joy and laughter to utter fucking heartache in a matter of seconds. Similar to almost all the films in this video, the hand-drawn animations bring the world to life through expressive character designs, detailed backgrounds, and fluid animations. Not only through the visuals, but through the sound cues and music tones. Immediately as the film starts, you understand that something's not right. The music is slow and brooding. The background is dark and ominous. You hear a faint barking in the distance that only grows as the film progresses. Even something as simple as the introduction, which many films would use still images to tell the story, is replaced with tension building as soon as it starts, slapping you directly in the face on what type of movie this is going to be. One thing I love about this film is that it doesn't sugarcoat it. They don't just show that Amos wants to keep Copper away from Todd because he doesn't like him. No, they show Amos trying to fucking kill Todd. Even having a scene of him coming home with a wagon full of animal skins. Now, they don't show any mutilation between the two animals, but it doesn't stop itself from being mature with its audience and showing the consequences of what a friendship like this could lead to. Same with the songs in the film, with lyrics that clearly states why it's not normal for Todd and Copper to be friends. This film has a lot of powerful and emotional scenes that have earned its special place in hearts of many, including my own. The scene where Widow Tweed has to release Todd into the wild for his own safety is arguably one of the saddest scenes in a Disney movie. Mainly because the scene doesn't feel forced. It's a reasonable situation that would be forced to happen, which makes it all the more miserable when Todd doesn't understand what's happening.
We met, it seems, such a short time ago. You looked at me, needing me so. Yet from your sadness, our happiness grew. And I found out I needed you too.
It also doesn't help that Disney has Widow read a monologue in that fucking harmonica. Let me just say that this one instrument sets the entire tone for this film. Depending on the music being played, you can tell immediately if Todd or Copper is on screen. And throughout the movie, it gets manipulated depending on the mood of the scene. But for me, the ending of this movie is really what sticks with me. After everything they've been through together, and even after Todd physically saves both Amos and Copper's life, they end up going their separate ways and move on with their lives. Although they are no longer enemies, they can never be as good of friends as they were when they were younger. It's a pretty heartbreaking ending, but it's the most realistic ending this film could have had. In order to show the realities of why unlikely friendships can both work and be detrimental to both parties involved, through its portrayal of friendship and realistic expectations, this film reminds us that even though things may not work out the way we want them to, sometimes that's okay. And I think that that's an important message kids need to understand in regard to how the real world works. And I find no better way to teach that than by watching this movie. And that's where the story ends. That's where the story ends. Released in 1985, Return to Oz was intended to be a sequel to the original 1939 Wizard of Oz, which followed Dorothy going back to the magical land of Oz. Now, seeing that most of the movies during this era followed a dark tone in their story, Return to Oz was no exception, having the first 15 minutes of the movie consist of Dorothy getting sent to a mental institution. Oh yeah, they don't even try to hide it either.
I'm gonna talk about a place that I've been to, but nobody believes it exists.
Now, I do have to say, it is kind of funny that the events of the first movie traumatized Dorothy so bad, her parents had to resort to electroshock therapy, or, in this movie's terms, electrical healing. Now, people have said that this movie scared the hell out of them as children, and I totally get it. One of the main reasons why Return to Oz is regarded as scary is its visual designs of the characters within Oz, and look no more than the Wheelers.
Come here, chicken!
Wheelers are humanoid beings with wheels for hands and feet and a laugh only suited for the mentally unstable. Return to Oz has an incredibly muted color palette and dilapidated landscapes, completely contrasting the beautiful, vibrant setting in the original. Now, just for the record, I don't hate this movie. I think the overall idea and creativity this movie offers fits really well for the darker tone it was going for. After watching this movie a good handful of times, it's pretty clear that the director just wanted to fucking terrify children. Because all the characters in this movie look like they want to fucking eat you. Now, I have actually came up with a theory for this movie. A theory that completely makes you rewatch this movie in a completely new way. My theory is that Dorothy got the electroshock therapy, and this whole movie is just her overstimulated brain imagining this before it gets fried. Now, the main reason I think this way is because just before the doctor pulls the lever, the breaker for the entire building goes out. And this is where Dorothy gets saved by a girl in a white dress. Now, for the small or no portion of my audience who are religious, you may know that whenever you see an angel or a spirit in media or literature, they're always described as wearing white, mainly because white is supposed to be symbolic for purity and the afterlife. Now, there's a scene where Dorothy and the little girl are escaping the institution, and the nurse is in hot pursuit behind them. Now, from the scene I'm showing you, it almost looks like as if the nurse has no interest in the little girl, and only Dorothy. And I think this is because the little girl is not really there. Now, I'm about to do something I don't think I would have ever done in a video. I'm gonna make a connection from one of the films I watched in my college cinema class to this movie. So spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't seen the 1961 film Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. It's only been out for about 62 years, so I think it's free game. In this movie, a man is on the losing side of a civil war and is about to be hanged for sabotage, when all of a sudden, as he drops, the rope breaks and he makes his escape. The whole movie is basically him trying to get back to his home to be with his wife. However, towards the end, when he finally gets back to his wife, it turns out that all events in this movie were just from his imagination, from his overstimulated brain seconds before he got hanged and died. And back to this movie, when the kingdom reverts back to normal and Dorothy is about to get sent home, she very much points out to the audience that it's starting to get really bright.
Goodbye, Dorothy.
It's so bright.
Goodbye, Dorothy.
And that's where the movie ends. Nah, not really, but imagine how great it would be if that's how it actually ended. But the reason I bring this up is because why would Dorothy bring this up if it didn't have some significance? If it's not something that the director intended to be made note of? Just some food for thought there. But yeah, no, Dorothy returns back to Kansas where she finds out that the institution burned down along with the doctor. And then you see the nurse get sent to jail, which I have no idea why she's getting sent to jail, as electroshock therapy is very much still used even today and is completely legal. Oh yeah, and one thing I forgot to mention is that both the nurse and the doctor in Dorothy's world are replicated as villains within Oz, which only just supports my claim that Dorothy's making all this shit up and never actually went to Oz. But yeah, that's pretty much my theory. I think it makes as much sense as anything in this movie. And actually it makes it a lot more fun to watch if you just imagine Dorothy picturing all this shit while tied to a hospital bed. Now don't get me wrong, Return to Oz is a really weird movie and is a complete 180 from the original Wizard of Oz, not only in its setting and story, but from its themes it teaches. You see, where the original Wizard of Oz had themes of friendship and life's journey, Return to Oz focuses a lot more on the internal struggles of Dorothy and her mental trauma, which sort of adds a lot more complexity and maturity than intended for a Disney film, almost making it not fit to be a sequel to The Wizard of Oz, but rather make it its own unique film. I'm not trying to say that The Return of Oz is this deep film that needs to be studied and analyzed as much as I'm making it out to be, but it's fun to take a movie that's clearly not as good as its predecessor and find ways to make it unique and fit the style Disney was going for. Released in 1986, The Great Mouse Detective is one of those movies where not a lot of people say it's their favorites compared to other Disney movies, but I have to give it a lot of respect because it does something so different from other Disney movies, and it does it right. The main plot of the film follows Basil of Baker Street, a mouse detective who is assigned with rescuing the father of a little girl from the evil
Professor Rattigan.
Now, if you haven't seen this film before, from the clips I'm showing you, you can start to understand what's being parodied. They don't flat out tell you, but it's pretty on the nose if you're familiar with the source material or have seen Sherlock Holmes before. Even having Basil's office be right under Sherlock Holmes' house, showing the audience where Basil might have gotten his inspiration from. This movie does things like this a lot, and I really enjoy it when a movie shows things rather than tells you. It allows the audience to come to their own conclusions, and it really shows that the people in charge of making this movie respect their audience enough to allow them to think while they're watching. A good example of this is Basil's introduction to the film. Dawson and Olivia are waiting in his office, looking at all his contraptions he's created, when they hear a loud voice and the door comes crashing open. We don't even know it's Basil until he takes off his disguise and introduces himself. He seems to be very preoccupied, being in the middle of a major breakthrough in his case, ignoring Olivia and Dawson as he's analyzing the bullet he's found. He even manages to pick up that Dawson's a doctor based on clues he's gathered as he's entered the room. Even while he's in the middle of talking, he's setting up an experiment to see if the bullet he's found is a potential clue in his case. Now, this may not seem like anything worth mentioning, but the audience is learning so much about Basil's personality just from watching this one scene. Basil as a character shines being charismatic and sharp-witted, showcasing his remarkable and intelligent skills as a detective. Contrasted with him is Dr. Dawson, who provides warmth and relatability to not only Olivia, but to the audience, serving as a perfect foil to Basil's analytical nature. The duo of Basil and Dawson is one of my favorites in Disney. The relationship gets molded so well as the film progresses, and is a perfect example of how you build up a relationship over time. I'm gonna show you one of my favorite scenes from this movie.
Basil! Olivia, she's
gone, Dawson. Confound it. Told you to watch over the girl. Oh, now she's been spirited away by that maniacal little monster, soon to be in the clutches of the most depraved mind in all of London. I should have known better than to... Dawson? Dawson? I say, Dawson, old chap.
Oh, that poor girl. I should have watched her more closely.
Don't worry, old fellow. It's not entirely hopeless. We'll get her back.
Do you think there's a chance?
There's always a chance, Doctor.
It's a relatively short conflict, but it gives you a whole new perspective on Basil. Through his facial expressions alone, you can tell that he cares deeply about this case, as well as for Dawson, comforting him and ensuring him that there is still time to get Olivia back. Now, I haven't even mentioned one of the best characters in this film, and arguably one of my favorite Disney villains.
Professor Rattigan.
Voiced amazingly by Vincent Price, who was really the only choice to make Rattigan as intimidating as he is. There is a reason why in the opening credits, his name is above everyone else's. Rattigan as a character isn't supposed to be someone you empathize for. He's supposed to be someone to hate, or more realistically, to fear. Although his motivations aren't too creative and him just wanting to rule all of Mousedom, Vincent Price brings the character to life through outstanding voice acting that makes any line Rattigan delivers sound so deliciously evil.
He's not afraid of a big, old, ugly rat like you.
Would you kindly sit down and shut up?
The voice acting along with his character overshadowing all the others in height truly makes Rattigan a terrifying presence, especially during the clock tower fight where Rattigan gets more and more unhinged, getting to see him visually revert back to his animal instincts. Speaking of visuals, The Great Mouse Detective is like a feast for the eyes. The film's Victorian London setting is absolutely stunning, combining dark colors with vintage decor to set the time period for this film perfectly. Also, just a little unknown fact about this movie, The Great Mouse Detective was one of the first movies Disney ever released to blend CGI and hand-drawn character animations. There's a sort of running joke in this movie where they show something like a carriage or a building and zoom into its mouse counterpart, showing just how much inspiration this society has taken from humans in terms of its appearance and architecture. But beyond its visual appeal, I have to talk about its score and sound design. Now, instead of rambling about how great this film's music is, I think there's no better way to explain it than just to show you the opening credits. So we have a little funny situation about this song. I tried tooth and nail every which way to try to include this song in this video, but Disney will not fucking budge. So sadly, I am unable to play you this song, but, you know, just look it up, because trust me, it's cool. But overall, I would say The Great Mouse Detective is definitely worth your time, because I don't think there's anything I can say that will display why this is one of the most underappreciated movies that Disney has ever released. After watching all the Disney Dark Age films, I feel that these Disney movies in particular showcase some of the best examples of storytelling and the ability to teach themes kids will remember. Even though the animation may not be the best, I still think it holds up to today and has charisma and charm bursting out of every character. The issue with modern Disney movies is they feel the need to explain everything for children or have to dumb it down for them to understand it. And while I know Disney is targeted towards children and meant to create fun and positive experiences, and I do think that is an important thing to do, however, I think it's very much possible to be able to create those positive memories while still be able to leave them with a good understanding of how reality really is without having to dumb it down for them. I think one of the biggest takeaways from this video or any Disney movie you watch is if you can replace the objects or animals within the story with real human problems, it shows that these types of situations can happen to anyone or anything, which makes the lesson so much more valuable not only for kids, but for adults. I want to thank you guys so much if you made it this far in this video. I just want to take a second to thank you for reaching 500 subscribers. And I didn't really have time to celebrate that because we immediately made it to 1,000, which is fucking insane. I gained over 1,000 subscribers over one video that I didn't think anyone would watch. So again, I just want to thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.